Chapter 7 Short Summary. Emelin does more training and secretly enjoys life with Creon, where he cooks for her and the sexual tension between them builds. Creon assaults a fey male for making gross comments about Emelin. Chapter 7 Long Summary. It's the end of the day and Emelin has been practicing hard, draining the color out of their materials, but still unable to turn half a stone into water. In the first chapter, Emelin explained that magically spent colors come back into clothing within hours unless you completely drain them. Once exhausted, they stay white forever. These training arc chapters could have been a great opportunity to showcase more intricacies of the color-based magic system, but instead we learn more about M's feelings towards Creon. My dress was a pale periwinkle by the time the sun hung directly above us and drenched my back in sweat. I had reduced one of Creon's shirts to an amusingly sweet pink, and another to a stark white that likely wouldn't recover. M reflects on the massive skill gap between her and Creon, between her and Mother Fey. There was nothing explosive about his magic, nothing grand and spectacular. He worked his colors like a carving knife, with cold, ruthless precision, turning bits and pieces of stone to dust without even stirring the sand below. His shoulders barely tensed. His face never showed a hint of effort, wielding powers that could hurt and maim and kill like anyone else might wipe a fleck of dust from their clothes. Quote, 366 years of training, and the mother was far, far older than that, end quote. Creon is 368 years old, and he's been training since he was 2 years old. She then gets annoyed and insecure that Creon is not praising or encouraging her, while thinking tsundere thoughts about Creon as he flies them back to his house. Quote, if I decapitated the mother herself tomorrow, he'd probably nod too, and suggest I use less yellow next time, end quote. Another tsundere/bratty quote. The thought annoyed me enough to make me step forward without flinching as he moved to scoop me into his arms again. If I could sufficiently remind myself of how much I hated him, his fey magic should have a hard time getting hold of me, end quote. She is building up both annoyance and willpower to resist his charms, until he takes off his shirt again. Then her brain melts. Quote, on the other side of the room, Creon was taking off his shirt. Oh, Zara, help me. I didn't need another demonstration of corded muscle and gleaming skin, not after all the effort I'd made to keep my head clear this afternoon. End quote. Her brain resumes function when he puts a shirt back on. Another side note, she ascribes some of his charm to fey magic, but to clarify, there's no magic involved in her attraction to him. That's just something that she tries to blame as part of the purity culture vibe throughout the book. When she has to play the silly little human in front of other fae as a way to make any kind of sexual agency, or when she has to say that he must be using magic for her to be so attracted to him, because otherwise that would be an indictment of her purity. Another side note and spoiler, confusingly, there is a subplot later about whether or not Creon actually used demon magic, not fey magic, to manipulate her feelings towards him. That subplot is different and not related to her comments about being physically attracted to Creon. As Emelin eats from a basket of the world's most ethically sourced food, she starts having insecure thoughts about her own body again. She has described herself multiple times as bony and now gaunt, as she blushes under his gaze. By contrast, she describes Creon as majestic and immortal elegance, making it clear she loathes herself and worships him. Quote, he raised an eyebrow as he glanced over his shoulder, running his gaze over my gaunt figure a little too demonstratively. A blush stormed my cheeks, end quote. In this next scene, a rival fey male named Ophion visits Creon's house unexpectedly. He makes rapey comments about Emelin until Creon attacks him. This scene serves to establish Ophion as a villain, Creon as a protector of Emelin, and also to indict fey males in general as being cruel and rapey. In front of Ophion, M puts on her silly little fey groupie plaything persona. Quote, but I was a silly, swoony human, obsessed with my fey hosts and fey in general. I didn't make snarky comments. I didn't even think of them, end quote. M makes a show out of acting extremely submissive, and Ophion makes an unsubtle jab about M being Creon's sex slave, alluding to her performing oral sex on Creon. Ophion keeps making crude comments and disrespecting M until Creon attacks him. Creon cuts off Ophion's hand and damages Ophion's wings. Ophion scurries away while apologizing. After Creon asserts himself as M's protector, he explains Ophion is Mother's lover. M insults the now-gone Ophion and wins a brief smile from Creon, which he tries to hide, because wringing emotions out of a man should be as difficult as trying to make half a stone turn into water. Creon reassures M that Ophion will just heal himself, and that there won't be any trouble for assaulting him. Spoiler, it turns out there will be a lot of trouble later as a result of assaulting Ophion. In romance books, why is there often a scene where MMC protects FMC from some creepy guy? On the surface, it seems like a heroic act, but often the MMC uses gratuitous, excessive violence to show dominance over the other guy. If you think critically about it, why include this type of scene in so many romance books? Is it really just a dramatic way to prove that MMC is dangerous to others but safe to FMC? It equates violence with caring and reinforces male ownership of his possession, the FMC. There's something sinister about a culture that yearns for excuses to violence. It has a similar feel to when pro-gun people fantasize about someone breaking into their home so they have an excuse to shoot someone. Creon has spent much of the training arcs ignoring or being minimally available with Emelin, but we're supposed to swoon when he explodes with an excuse for violence, as if that makes up for all of his previous unreliability. There is a Fae Festival of Light, but Creon decides not to go, while also insinuating that he could be having sex with M at the festival while others watch. M tries not to faint in excitement. That's not a joke, that's literally what she's thinking in the book. Quote, I quite felt like getting the vapors, but I'd be damned if I let him notice, end quote. They make up a mutual cover story about why they're not appearing at the festival. Then M senses a change in Creon. He cooks for her and she illustrates sign language flashcards for him to study. Together in silence, they eat by his window and watch the festival lanterns float off into the air and listen to the moving music. They share a sense of camaraderie over having worked together to reject Ophion and their shared magical ancestry. M now views Creon in a new light, thinking he isn't as vicious as the legends say. She praises him internally for not raping her, for setting up a protective pact, for feeding her, and for fighting off Ophion. M asks if Creon really killed all those humans, and even though Creon confirms he did, she resolves to treat him more like a human rather than a cold-blooded killer. She plots to treat him with empathy, and do a bunch of emotional labor to get him to open up. Then she spends the rest of the chapter fantasizing about him bedding her, while cursing her own thoughts, because kya, it's been 5 whole minutes since she acted tsundere.